Hello and welcome. Thank you very much to all of our audience who are watching us today from all over the world. Today we have Dr. Shamik Ghosh with us, who is one of the renowned pediatricians in Kolkata in New Town, and very senior, very experienced pediatrician who has done his basic medical schooling from Neel Ratan Sarkar Medical College in Kolkata. His passion for pediatrics also led him to a rigorous postgraduate training program from Armed Forces Medical College in Pune and Institute of Child Health, Kolkata. Dr. Ghosh has further pursued his PG training in UK at various institutions including Newcastle University and Liverpool University. Dr. Ghosh has also successfully amalgamated his training in India and UK to render care with emphasis on good communication skills. He is currently a senior consultant pediatrician at Bhagirathi Newtia Women and Child Care Center, Newtown, and Manipal Hospital, Salt Lake. So, a very warm welcome and thank you, heartfelt gratitude. We know how busy you are. Thank you so much for taking the time and, still coming and, honoring us with your presence.
Always a pleasure. I have seen you taking the initiative, not only today, but also during the COVID times. I think so. We had a lovely program.
Absolutely.
So, always there for any efforts for furthering school health and the health of children.
Thank you so much. I think that is much needed in today's times, support from people like who are always ready for a cause. So today we are going to be talking, specifically talking about language and social developments in early childhood. So right from the the time the child starts making their first sounds until their formal schooling age is what we are going to talk about. So Dr. Ghosh, just tell us, when do we actually consider language as a language? Does a child making babbling sounds consider as a language? Or their cries, even when a newborn child cries, we believe that that is a language in itself. So what is language development when we talk about children?
Lovely question. We are all, the human beings have a unique mental faculty which allows us to communicate with each other. And when a newborn baby is born, there is a conception amongst a lot of parents that this child is unable to communicate even with the mother. Mm-hmm. But then, like you just now mentioned, that crying is also a form of communication. It's a non-verbal form of communication, right. But normally when a child cries, the general assumption amongst mothers, especially first-time mothers, and I do not blame anyone for presuming so, but they do presume that either the baby is hungry or the baby pet porini, that is, right. The baby is still not been satisfied. So I tell every parent that when you are even dealing with a newborn baby, you must remember that this newborn baby feels exactly like you and me. The right. child can feel warm, the child can feel cold, the child can feel hungry, the child can feel pain. Everything that you and me feel, the child can feel. But because the figure of speech hasn't yet developed, it is only imperative that this newborn baby conveys all its inconveniences through a cry. So as a parent, as a first-time mother, I need to have a very scientific approach to my crying child and not be presumptive about what I think the child needs. Right. So supposing I have a crying child, we always say, first and foremost, just check the diapers of the baby. Just cleaning the baby at times can quieten a child. The second and probably the most important step is giving the child a skin-to-skin touch. Because for 9 months they were in the mother's womb, used to an ambient temperature of around 36-37 degrees. Mm-hmm. And now the baby is just crying for maternal warmth and affection. So you would find even in a newborn baby, 90% of the time, the baby is quiet in the mother's lap. Right. The moment you're putting the child down, the child is crying. Again back into the mother's lap, the child is quiet. So that cry is not a hunger cry. That cry is not a cry for any pain. It is a cry only for maternal warmth and affection. If you find that the child is in your lap, not quietening, get the baby to feed. And only after your feeding attempts are unsuccessful would you say that the baby is in pain. That pain could be anywhere, not necessarily the tummy pains.
Right.
It could be a headache, it could be a body ache. So, just to summarize, nature gives even a newborn baby the ability to convey his or her needs through a language which at that age we call a cry.
Right. So thank you so much for such a detailed explanation. I am sure that this would help anybody, even a person who is not a mother but who works with children in general.
Yes.
It could be a nurse, it could be a nanny, it could be childcare providers like us who deal with children of all age.
Yeah.
So we sometimes think that a mother's instinct helps them in understanding what it does,
Yes.
but this explanation definitely helps who are not mothers to that any child, that particular child.
Yes, yes.
So language is just a way of communication. It
Yeah.
could be a cry, it could be a howl, it could be English, it could be Bengali, it could be German, for all that matters. So you were talking about warmth and mother's hug, which also contributes a lot to the social development.
Yes.
Since we are talking about language and social, so we can say these are a little bit interconnected as well.
They are. I mean, I'm speaking to you, right? Okay. I just don't speak automatically. I have some visual inputs, I'm having some auditory inputs, and I'm having some social or environmental inputs which are allowing me to frame what speech I am communicating to you. Right? Okay. So before we jump to that, let me just extrapolate a little bit
Sure.
more about the steps of speech. So once a baby learns to convey his or her needs, the next is communicating with the first social contact, and that is the mother.
Right.
So they develop a social smile around 6 to 8 weeks. Okay? And that is the first time wherein a baby, other than the needs of the child, the own needs of the child, they are able to recognize that there is somewhere else in this world with whom he or she can relate. Gradually, if you notice the development of the child, the circle increases to any of the caregivers at home who have cared to give their love and affection to the baby. Right? So once this social circle is expanding, the baby's gestures also start
Right.
changing. Right?
Right.
They become very person specific. Right? If I
Absolutely.
am talking to the baby, there will be a visual
Yeah,
fixation.
correct.
The baby will smile back at me. And at the same time, a little bit further down the line, the moment the baby learns to recognize the familiar, he also develops an instinct for letting the world know who is unfamiliar.
Right.
So they develop a stranger anxiety. So all of this is a continuum. It's a gradual process, by which means we reach ultimately the stage at which you and me are, where we have a figure of speech by which we communicate
Right.
to each other.
So when we talk about the social circle, starting with the mother who the child feels most connected to, then probably another parent and
Immediate
a
parent.
sets of grandparents or uncles or brothers or siblings or maybe any other adult who is in
Sure.
the immediate household.
Sure.
So how especially taking today's time into consideration, whereas technology was already working against social
Yeah.
development
Yes.
to a certain extent, and after COVID we have seen a lot of changes which still children especially are recovering from,
Yeah.
in terms of language, in terms of social
Social.
as well. So what we as supporters to this child can do so that they achieve that milestone that we see
Yes.
as they are growing. So what can we do
Absolutely.
for them?
See, as long as nature goes on helping mankind, we really don't audit ourselves or reflect back upon what is happening. Till I don't encounter a dumb person, I will not really figure out how is speech produced. Till I don't encounter a deaf person, I will not figure out how that person's speech is being produced. So, till COVID happened, I don't think we had a very clear understanding of how the social skills of a child develops. So, there is a stage where I mention that the child learns to interact with the mother, the child likes to interact with the family members, then develop a social anxiety, all right, by which he or she can differentiate what is known and what is unknown.
Right.
Then comes a period where they would not like to interact with anybody and everybody of any age and any gender. There comes a time where they are looking for peers.
Okay.
Right. So that peer development starts around 1.5 to 2 years, wherein this child develops an age identity and a gender identity.
Okay.
And how do they develop that? So supposing you give your little one a few building blocks, right? And you are sitting with the child as a mother and you're trying to, help your child make good use of the building blocks. You're trying to build a bridge, you're trying to build a house, you're trying to build a staircase, and the child is trying to imitate you, right? But if you would have noticed carefully, immediately the learning is not there. The learning is by repeated
Repetition.
practice. And while you're trying to engage, the engagement isn't very satisfying for the mother because the child isn't able to repeat exactly what you are doing. You're finely skilled. The baby just has gross motor skills.
Correct.
All right. But put this baby with another little one, same age, give both of them building blocks, and both would be handling things similarly.
Right.
So then this baby develops an identity that there is someone else just like me who is in this world, and they connect, right? They learn to share, they learn to play by themselves, and this is where the first baby steps of social development start. So this is what we call the stage of peer interaction. So there was a time for maternal interaction, there was a time for the known people to interact, there was a time for the unknowns to be sieved out, but now has come the time, once they develop their age and their gender identity, to mix with people who have similar likes, similar ways of handling objects, and similar abilities with regards to their hands and feet. So this stage, aage ki hoto, used to happen in a joint family amongst brothers
Siblings,
and sisters, who are back to back, all right, okay, one a little older, one a little younger. They are teaching him their ABCD, they are teaching him how to throw a ball, they are teaching him how to play, all right. So this, with the onset of nuclear families and with COVID, taught us that now we have to look out for these people. You have to look into your neighborhood, you've got to look into your family, you've got to look amongst your friends who have similar age group children, and that is where the whole concept of the play school has come, because this is the age where you are going to promote the social interactions of the child, even of a child who is non-verbal. I'm sure when you're running a place like this, the child who comes to you at 2 years isn't verbalizing properly, okay, has no bladder bowel control, okay, is going to go through a phase where the child is going to be screaming her lungs out the moment the parent drops them here, right? But the familiarity is what we are trying to develop. The social skills is what we are trying to develop through a play school during this period of peer development.
Right. So, since we are talking about language so much, that there are certain articles or papers that say that once the child reaches 2 years or so, once the child has a grasp on one of the languages, probably the mother tongue or the language that is most spoken, if you teach them two more languages, maybe if he hears 2 to 3 languages at time, the brain development is much faster, much better. How true or how much of a myth is that?
See, as far as mental capabilities are concerned, there is a wide variation. Let me even say that there is a spectrum which we can call as normal. All right, okay? And this spectrum has to be there in the knowledge of every parent. So, the general rule of thumb is that the first language that the child picks up is usually the mother tongue, right? So, somebody born in a Bengali family will learn Bangla. Somebody in a Tamil family will speak Tamil. And mind you, the first language that is being learned isn't through the grammar of that language. So it's a very, very fine and unique act of imitation. A capability which probably doesn't, come later in life. Today, if I were to see a French-speaking person and think that just by observing the lip movements of the Frenchman, I'm going to pick up French, I would not be able to do it. I would have to go through the grammar, a proper teaching course before I pick it up. So, invariably as a pediatrician, our advice to parents is that first and foremost, while the child is trying to learn a language, speak to the child in the language that is being spoken to at home. Now, much as we say that, we are also aware of this unique capability of a child till 3 or even 5 years, where they pick up languages just by listening to the languages. So once they picked up the mother tongue, which many children do just by their interactions at home, where they are spending say 20 or 22 hours out of 24 hours, the necessity of having to interact in a social group where other languages are being spoken also stimulates their learning of other languages. So there is nothing to fear in a mother. Lots of times we get parents, Dr. Babu, I want to admit my child to an English medium school. So, do I teach this child English before I teach this child Bangla? So, my answer is no. It's just the opposite way around.
Right.
So, if your child is going to be admitted at say 3 years to a proper school, the school which is taking in the child will know very well that if there is one language in which I would expect proficiency from the child, it would be the mother tongue. And it's only after the school provides the correct environment for learning and the healthy social circle for learning that the child will pick up the other languages in which to communicate with the colleagues, classmates and the teachers. And that happens pretty quickly. So there isn't much truth that, when you are trying to give 2 or 3 languages at a time, that sharpens your mental skills better. It probably sharpens your communication skills better, but nothing is going to happen hop, step and jump. Right. The first thing will be the mother tongue, then the peer and then the teachers. That is how it will come.
Right. So, probably to have a broader idea, since we did not start with that. So, what would you we spoke about language development, what languages, and we slowly understood that even anything that is used to communicate becomes a language. So similarly, what would you consider are social skills in a child who barely understands what society is? So what for them would be social skills, or what is the are we expecting too much from children when they're coming to school, that they would come and start mingling with everybody and go home as best friends? So what is the optimistic approach of that we should have for a child as a social development?
So, I mean, I'm sure you've yourself gone through this training. As pediatricians, we go through a lot of developmental training, which we, in very common parlance, say Montessori training. All right. So, this training basically teaches us to treat every child as a unique individual, right? So, the first time I meet a child and I say hello, somebody is going to be an extrovert and will say hello and jump onto my lap. There'll be another one who would just say a very courteous hello and then just walk away. There'll be another one who wouldn't even open his mouth. So none of these three are abnormal. So how I am going to gain my familiarity with all these three children will depend upon how do I conduct myself with this child. So all that the child is expressing is an authentic expression. That is what I need to understand as a caregiver. If the child is jumping onto my lap, means the child is desirous of some love and affection. And she is extrovert by nature, has to be reciprocated. If a child is shy, has managed to say a hello, but not really jumped very close to me, I need to respect that distance with the child and gradually allow familiarity to breed whatever attachment that I can develop with the child. If the child has not found any speech to even acknowledge my greeting, I need to respect that also, because this child may not have been exposed to a social milieu before he came to school. Like it happened during COVID. We had a lot of children who only knew that their world comprised of their parents, of the working maid at home, and if they were lucky, with the grandparents. So seeing somebody outside, seeing so many children all at once, it can be sometimes very overwhelming. Sometimes I would even say threatening to people, right? So they get scared, they go into a shell, right? So please allow that child to come out of the shell. What I tell all parents is, just like a child who's thumb sucking in his infancy or in his early childhood will ultimately come out of the thumb sucking when he or she develops their own social inhibitions. The same thing applies to a shy child or to an introverted child. They're not going to remain shy for life. They will develop their circle of friends. They may not be party goers, but they will all develop their circle of friends, provided you give them the time. So the basic essence of teaching is, one, you respect their intimacy if it is there, you respect their distance if it is there, and you give them a time, a reasonable amount of time to develop their social skills.
Right. I think the same advice could be given to parents also, not
Absolutely.
just outsiders, because it starts from the parents.
Yeah.
That you talk so much at home, the whole day you are chewing away my ears, but the moment I tell you to greet somebody, or just go and talk to your friends, you don't go. Yeah. Something is wrong with you.
So parenting is a science. It's an art also. All right. Okay. So the science should teach the parents the biological basis of why a person takes time to develop a milestone. The art should teach a parent as how to help the child and stimulate the child to achieve a milestone. Okay, so that's how succinctly we can put it. We must also remember that with nuclear families, small families, most of the parents are pretty inexperienced as far as parenting a child is concerned.
True.
So, I think so as a caregiver or as a parent counselor, we cannot afford to be harsh on them for the mistakes that they might be making. It might, because, I have studied, in my 30 years of pediatric practice, I've come across so many different kinds of parents. Maybe I have the advantage and my experiential learning to tell me what is right and what is wrong. But I must put myself in the place of that parent and try and appreciate that that parent is probably acting on her impulses. She's seeing another child just mingling into the crowd very easily, and she as a parent finds that her child is a shy person who is just holding on to her, not really wanting to get into the classroom. So the parent who is in this situation is also there for the first time. They do not have much of an understanding. So मुंह की बात आपने छीन ली कि the first education has to be for the parents. You know, they have to be made aware of what the spectrum is. You know, we cannot be giving them points of reference. Ki 6 months, child should sit. 1 year, child should sit without support. You know, it can happen anywhere in between. Maybe a couple of months later. 3 years, child should speak. So it doesn't mean that, you know, somebody who's speaking at 1.5 years or 2 years is precocious, and someone who's speaking at 3 years and 2 months is a delayed development. So we need to get this across to the parents, okay? The need, the urgency is a lot more in this generation because for other reasons, logistical, financial and social, the family sizes have become smaller, so we no more can afford as a country of more than 1.5 billion to have large families. It is a necessity that our families are going to shrink so that we can all survive with the resources that are available in our country. Absolutely. But at the same time, we need to fulfill these gaps that the larger families gave with proper education and with proper counseling. Counseling primarily of the parents and patience with our children.
True. I think the need to come together as a community is now, you know, ever more than it was in earlier times.
Absolutely.
Earlier times, you know, families in itself were a community. And now, you know, the smaller families come together to, you know, become a larger community so that we can provide that social support, we can provide that development in our, you know, children.
Absolutely.
So, before we, you know, we will not take up any more of your time. Before we close down, I would like you to, you know, probably if you can put in maybe some concluding thoughts or a gist on, you know, whatever conversation we had today in case we missed out on something, you know.
Absolutely. So taking up the thread, you know, from our discussion, if I can summarize, you know, society is never served by any degree or any form of selfishness. It is always served by selflessness. And this selflessness has to begin from home, much like charity begins at home.
Absolutely.
All right? So if I am a parent today, I need to understand that I am responsible not just for my child's physical well-being, but also the mental well-being.
Right.
And this mental well-being involves a healthy social development and a healthy speech development also. Now, this healthy social development invariably involves looking for peers, not only amongst the children, but also amongst young parents, right? So, if today I'm going through an experience and I have this support group, like every school can have a parent support group, right?
It's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you exchange your experiences, you know, you exchange your difficulties, and I'm sure much as the teachers are trying to help a child write the first alphabet, there could be ways and means by which somebody knows of a better way of getting the child to write an alphabet, or, you know, pronouncing a few words, phonetics, simple phonetics, okay? Right. There may be someone amongst the parents, you know, who knows how to convey phonetics to a child. There could be, you know, parents who are very good at organizing small get-togethers of their children out of their rigid school hours. You know, in school hours, you do not expect a free expression always.
Right.
You are inhibited by certain rules and regulations, but there needs to be a time when the child is rolling on the play field, or they are, you know, pulling each other's hair, or they are, you know, going up a slide or going down a slide. So creating these times for my child is not something that I can do on my own. If I am a parent and if you are a parent, if both of us have children who are of the same age group and we can collaborate, it helps this child to both the children to develop much better than I could have done on my own. So that is the message to society, that when you are trying to take care of your child's development, share your experiences. You will only learn how to fill in the gaps. Make sure you are patient with your child, because milestones don't develop all at once. There is a spectrum. And finally, if you find you are not getting the right answers, please go to your pediatrician. Please go to your school health counselors. Go to your psychologists. They are trained. I know this, they know better than you and me how to read the mind of a child. Take their help and make sure your child is on the right track.
Thank you so much. I think there could not have been any better conclusion. So just picking up on a couple of things that you mentioned. One is, I think even though we are living in this technological age, there is still a little bit of stigma when it comes to words such as psychologists, therapists, counselors. Even me as a CBT expert, we meet so many parents who still don't think that my child doesn't need help. Inside they feel that my child definitely needs that extra help, but externally they are thinking that my child doesn't need help. Your child needs help simply so that he can become self-confident. But sometimes they take it very negatively, so we need to work on that, removing that stigma that these are people just like people are ready to visit doctors, people are ready to visit any kind of hire any kind of help. So psychologists, counselors, these are all helpers. They are there to help you. So I think we should start including them in community helper chapters,
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, and what I think society needs to learn is that we are all governed by our hormones and by our neurotransmitters. Absolutely. All right, okay? So today if I have a deficiency of insulin, I will have a difficulty in digesting my carbs. Right? So I need an insulin replacement. So if I have a deficiency of thyroxine, I am going to need an infusion or a supplementation of thyroxine for me to metabolically function properly. Right. So similarly, our minds work not just magically or through some abstract means, but there are definite neural circuit pathways. There are neurotransmitters which have a biological basis, and you have levels varying between two different people. Correct. As to how clearly a person can think, articulate, right, and talk. So sometimes whatever be the deficiencies, whether it's overt, covert, or sometimes not even apparent to the caregiver, they need to be identified by the mental health therapist, and they need to be stimulated very specifically. You need a cognitive behavioral therapy for a child who isn't able to adjust his or her moods. True. For a child who is not able to mix into a crowd, and people think that I am very logical, I am going to get this child to become exactly like me with my logic, not really realizing that the basic substrate is not there. That needs to be produced before the child will listen to your logic.
So I have just met someone who told me that when asked that what does a special child need, though this is not our topic for today, just something to build on what you said. What do you think a child on an autism spectrum? First of all, people don't realize autism has spectrum. So when you ask that question, how will you treat? With love was the answer, which I do not completely negate, but love is not not something that can help with everything that the child is facing. The child needs something additional. So when you say that love can treat everything, it sounds like a fairy tale. Absolutely. Which life is not.
So let me just give you an analogy, right? What we really need to understand is any kind of therapy It cannot be a subjective therapy. As time has passed on, as science has improved, we have learned that even mental health therapies need objective analysis and objective targets and even, I dare say, scoring systems. So, you need, if you have something, right, it needs to be analyzed properly. Supposing I have a sudden blood sugar of 454 and you are my diabetologist. When I am coming to you with that 454 blood sugar, I am all dizzy, I am dehydrated, I am drinking loads of water and I am still dehydrated. If you start lecturing me on lifestyle and how I must cut the carbs in my diet, do you think you're going to make any impression on me?
Absolutely
No.
not.
So I need to bring down that blood sugar. I need to make this person get into a state of mind where he will be willing to listen to what I say about lifestyle and then do it. A person comes with a stroke. A neurologist sees such a patient and straight away tells the patient, go to a physiotherapist and get yourself rectified. Is it going to work? No. So similarly, if you feel your child has a challenge, has a special need, you first need to analyze how much is the special need, in which sphere is the special need. Is it a hearing problem? Is it an articulation problem? Is it a processing problem? You need to analyze that, because then the therapy will be directed towards that.
Correct.
You find so many children on the autistic spectrum who are understanding every bit of what you're saying, but because their articulation isn't good,
Correct.
they are getting into anger fits.
Right.
They are, they are being frustrated. They aren't able to express themselves. So I need to understand as to where the problem is. Only then I can talk about the remedial measure. So your point is not just well taken, it has to be hammered into society that mental issues, developmental issues need as much of an objective analysis as estimation of blood sugar or thyroid levels or even estimation of fever. Only then I can decide what dose of paracetamol to give you, right?
True.
So please don't keep things subjective. Get them into an objective frame of mind so that we can give you the corrective measures.
Exactly. So the only reason that we spoke about this very quickly was simply to reiterate that you can't simply say that my child has social issues, my child has language problems. So there could be some underlying issues which we need to identify and then work case to case.
Yeah.
We cannot just judge, everyone like that. So thank you so much. I guess we can,
Ashuchi, I'm sure you've come across, problems of communication and then found that there's some amount of bullying that is going on in school.
Yeah.
So there you go. Right. So everything needs to be delved in some depth only then.
That is a complete different, for
absolutely.
another day. That's a discussion
Absolutely.
for another day altogether.
Sure.
So thank you so much for our time.
My pleasure.
We do look forward to having you more in our premises and, maybe talking to parents directly.
Yes.
At one point in time, and I'm sure all the parents have
That
lots
would be
of
lovely,
questions.
because it gives us a way of learning.
Absolutely.
Okay. How much ever I pontificate from this chair, there would be a new experience of parent
share.
which I may need to reflect back upon,
True.
audit myself, and then give an answer. Right?
True.
They never fail to surprise us.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you so much everyone who is watching us today, and we do hope that you have a lot of key takeaways from today's discussion, and we hope to bring in lot more of such insights and experts in our premises. Thank you so much.
Thank you.